So, Dominic, let me ask you, who's had a good week?
I am giving good week to Ikea, who have been included in a controversial list from the Swedish government, naming the top 100 things that make up the cultural canon of Sweden. IKEA probably are pleased to be included on this list. They have a good week. And they've been included on this list along with the likes of some films by Ingmar Bergman, Pippi Longstocking, or Pippi
Love her.
Langstrump, as they call her in Sweden. And even the concept of paternity leave is on this list. That's also made it onto the cultural canon. Apparently, that was introduced in Sweden in 1974.
How
But
progressive.
very, but there is a very notable exception that's caused a bit of a hoo-ha online. Sweden's most successful musicians are not on the list. There is no Abba.
What? How's this happened? And more importantly, why?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem kind of farcical not to include ABBA on a list of of Swedish cultural goodies, but the panel who've put it together have defended this omission by saying that the list only includes Swedish culture from before 1975. They did this to make sure that the list only contains cultural things that have had a lasting impact on Swedish culture. And they say most of ABBA's contribution to culture came after 1975. But I think that's a rather weak response, especially considering ABBA actually formed in 1972 and had won Eurovision in 1974 with one of their most beloved songs, Waterloo, a song which also was chosen as the best song in Eurovision history at the 50th anniversary of Eurovision in 2005. So yeah, I think this exclusion and the reasoning for it is pretty strange, and I think it's pretty weird to imply in 2025 that ABBA haven't had a lasting impact on culture.
I'm pretty sure that there must be thousands of ABBA fans right now screaming in anger.
I think so.
Who are the people making these ridiculous decisions? Who can I send my strongly worded letter of complaint to?
Well, you should be writing to Sweden's government. As I said, this is an official list from the government. Well, maybe actually you could write to the committee itself. And honestly, that committee has not had a totally easy ride since they were commissioned to put this list together a few years ago. One of the 5 committee members resigned and described the list as very exclusionary. It's also received criticism from many corners of Swedish society, including the likes of the Swedish Academy, the body that hands out the Nobel Prize for Literature, and also the Swedish Writers Association, to name just 2 of the high-profile institutional critics of the list.
So it's not just ABBA who are feeling pissed off about it.
No, by no means. And yeah, I should mention that the creation of this list, the so-called cultural canon, was included in the coalition agreement of the current minority government. That government is led by the moderates, and it relies on support from the Sweden Democrats, who are a right-wing populist party. The initiative had actually long been a pet project of the Sweden Democrats, and presumably because of that, it was carried forward as part of the coalition deal to secure the support of the politicians from the Sweden Democrats. I don't think it was the only thing that they gave them, but it was one of the sweeteners. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not just ABBA who are feeling offended. This list has been widely criticized for presenting a narrow and conservative view of Swedish culture. Right. It entirely excludes Islamic landmarks, despite having a whole religion section, and despite approximately 8 to 10% of Sweden's population being Muslim.
Interesting.
The Sami jojk, a traditional form of song in Sami music, is included, but there is criticism that the Sami community weren't involved in putting this list together in the proper way, and that the Sami parliament was not consulted at all in the making of this list.
This all sounds quite controversial and not really well thought out, to be honest. Like, why even bother making a list like this if it's not representative of modern society? Even if they are things that, even if you take 1975 as a sort of starting point, clearly there's some issue here. So I just have to ask, isn't this kind of list always going to be divisive?
Yeah, I mean, it is a good question. Why make this list? Lars Trägård, a historian who led the committee, claimed in the Dagens Nyheter that the culture canon could be used to help immigrants to integrate. So essentially, he's saying now there's a list where you can find out what is officially Swedish culture. But if that's the case, then why put this rather arbitrary date of only including culture from before 1975? Wouldn't it help immigrants to integrate if they learned about the culture from today as well as the culture from before 1975? I mean, why not include things like the work of Swedish rapper Silvana Imam, who has Syrian-Lithuanian roots and protests racism and homophobia in her work, or the work of the celebrated Swedish novelist and playwright Jonas Hassan Khemiri? Why not give them some Robin or Loreen, or even that lovely Swedish TV series Young Royals? If you really want to help people...
Good.
It was good. If you really want to help people integrate, if that is really honestly your goal, then show them that modern Sweden celebrates cultural diversity. In preparing for this Good Week, I read a really good opinion piece in The Guardian from the Stockholm-based cultural critic Gabriel V. Rindborg, in which he outlines why we should be really suspicious when states try to define a national culture, especially when the arts are in the midst of a funding crisis. He also points out that whilst the global right are spending their days criticizing woke culture for policing words, it's actually the right-wing government here who are actually officially deciding which cultural concepts and terms are officially Swedish. I'll link to that article in the show notes because it's really well written, and he both stresses the fact that this cultural listicle will probably just disappear into thin air before we know it, but also that at the same time, it's a triumph for nationalistic ideology. But yeah, if it doesn't disappear into thin air, the committee says that the list isn't fixed. The head of the committee, he calls it a departure hall, not a final destination. So maybe Abba will make it onto the list one day, although honestly, I don't know if Agneta, Bjorn, Benny and Anna-Frid actually care at all. Probably not.
And why would they want to be on that list under these circumstances? They probably wouldn't be in that great company if they don't have because, they were quite revolutionary for their time in a way in music terms and, standing for sort of progressive, fun culture and inclusiveness. And this doesn't sound like they'd be in really good company. By the way, if I can just commend you on your Swedish accent, it is excellent.
Oh, thank you. Do you speak Swedish?
Hurdy-brody, hurdy-gurdy.
Oh, I don't know if we can include that.
It's from the Muppets. It's the Swedish chef, of course.
Yeah.
It isn't just me. It's not me being racist. I'm actually, I hope the Swedish chef is on that list. Is he on the list? If not, he should be. I don't
think the Swedish chef is on that list, which is a scandal.
It is a scandal. It's very scandalous.
Anyway, that was Good Week for Ikea. Although, actually, sorry, I didn't really talk about Ikea at all. But to mention one thing about Ikea, I was surprised to see that the Ikea meatballs didn't make it onto the list on their own. It was just Ikea as a brand.
That's funny. I was going to ask you about this, about with the meatballs and the hot dogs and all of their amazing Christmas cookies and just all the food, basically, that you go there for.
Yeah, so this list is getting more and more problematic the more we look into it.
Yes, I don't like it. I don't know how you say that in Swedish, but no hurdy-gurdy.
Sure, something like that. I guess I probably should have called this segment a good week for the Nationalist Sweden Democrats or a bad week for Abba, but sure, that was apparently a good week for Ikea.